All right, so I will be speaking at the Colorado Coaches Convention coming up here in January. It's going to be a great opportunity. I'm really grateful for it. But for those of you that can't make it, I'm going to put together this quick little slideshow here to go over what it is I'll be talking about. And for me, obviously, building the modern starting pitcher is something that I hold pretty near and dear to me. I think we've done a pretty poor job of developing the starting pitcher here over the last 10 to 15 years. And I think I have enough information to kind of prove that. And then obviously why our system is a good option for those guys that want to be the starting pitcher. That's kind of who I'm focusing on, is that guy that wants to dominate as the starting pitcher. So a couple things I've done in the past. Here's a few research articles that I've been on. I'm not going to really go over those here, but if you want to go see them, go check them out, and you can kind of see that I have a little bit of a background in research as well as the performance side of baseball. So right now we do have a problem in the game of baseball, and we see the average inning pitch per game for a starter has been continually on the decline and is kind of stabilized from 2020 to 2025. We're right under that 5 inning mark, which is not a good sign. But one thing you will see, and again in some of those research articles that you can go back and look at, is you'll see that the teams that do the best obviously are above that average for the starting pitcher. So we want to see guys that are getting better, pitching deeper into games, but what we're seeing is an actual decline in innings pitched by starters. And then on the inverse of that, we're seeing for numbers of surgeries for starting pitchers is they're continually going up. So we're seeing these numbers continually increase year to year. They're not going down. Starters are throwing less, but they're getting hurt more. So there's a big problem that we have with these numbers, and that's not a good track record to have. Is seeing a decrease in amount of time you're on the field, but an increase in the injuries. So what is it that kind of my background is each year on average, I'm averaging about $2 million in scholarships per year for the athletes that I work with. And then I'm getting about $15 million in professional contracts each year. And those include, new draftees, re-signs, different things like that. So when I first started out, I was not getting these type of results. And it took a lot of tweaking and adjusting and changing and switching my mindset to start having positive results. So I bring those numbers up just to show, hey, you know what? I started out in a very rough spot in terms of player development, and now I'm still getting better as we go. I don't have all the answers, but I do feel like I have a pretty good option of getting players to those goals that they're looking for. So what I do is I have something that I call the pitching performance pyramid. Now, what I do is I start off down here at the bottom where we have arm care, functional training, and movement patterns. So we're just really setting the foundation for a player to be able to move, to be able to repeat a movement, and then be able to support with strength that actual aspect of repeatability. After that, then I move into movement proficiency, which is just biomechanics. So that's where we have a whole different presentation. We'll go over at some point on that, but that's where we go through all the mechanical variables, the timing, the sequencing, all the mechanics that come with that. And then I like to move into game understanding, because once we can repeat a movement and we can consistently throw strikes and do the things we need to, then we need to start learning how to cover bases, how to throw specific things, changing speeds, learning how to pitch, when to use your changeup, how to use your breaking ball. So now learning the actual aspects, and then we get into velocity and speed development. That's where we get into our strength training, weighted ball work if you really need it, different things like that. And then once we're throwing a specific velocity, then we get into pitch shape development. Now, what I've noticed is baseball, and even when I was first starting out, everyone starts with these two aspects of the pyramid and they bring them down to the bottom. Everybody wants to go straight to velo and speed development, and everybody wants to go straight into how much can I put movement on my breaking ball, change up, or increase this on my fastball. Well, yes, these two things are going to be sprinkled in at every level. But the big thing is we have to focus on these first two levels before we can really get any lasting changes on those other three levels when it comes down to it. So I do have a little different view of how that player should be developed. I put more emphasis than most on those functional training aspects. And what that looks like is a lot of isometric sprint work, different things like that. So moving forward, what is functional training for me is we look at mobility first, not max loads. So what we mean by that is we are looking at what is that range of motion? What is our ankles doing? What are our hips doing? How are we doing, a bird dog, different movements that just talk to us about lumbopelvic control. There's a ton of great research out there on that I didn't do. Other groups that are way brighter than me. And it's always best to learn from others' mistakes. That's the way that I view it is if they're going to go through and carve the trail for you, you may as well make it easy. What we see is that the better we can have that mobility and stability, in our pelvis and in our joints and different areas, we're going to have a better opportunity to repeat movements. After that, then we get into custom arm care protocols. So we test, adjust, and train. So what we mean by that is we have this tool called Arm Care, and I'm the director of pitching with that company. And it is, to me, the one tool that every pitcher should have because we're using something called the dynamometer, which is a strength tester, where we look at internal rotation, external rotation, scaption, and then a pinch grip, just like we're throwing a fastball. So we want to make sure that we're testing in those positions we're going to use. And based on those four measures, it's going to give you custom training using the crossover symmetry band system to fix imbalances, to fix weaknesses. And then once we get that strength base set, now we're able to start layering on top of everything else. After we have a really good foundation with our arm care protocols, and understand that custom training, then we move into body weight first. So I don't like to push players into strength training because a lot of guys go too early on. And as they add in weight, they don't have that stability, right? We want mobility and stability first. And mobility is going to come through our arm care protocols. And then stability is going to come through our isometric protocols. So we're going to do a ton of isometric body weight work because we want to learn how to stabilize those joints, use the muscles around them to actually transfer energy. And then once we've done that, then we can start working into aerobic and anaerobic blends. And this is where the big issue between old school and new school need to start coming together to work a little bit better is whenever someone says like, hey, you need to do your aerobic work, everyone gets upset. Well, you shouldn't jog, you shouldn't do this, you shouldn't ride the bike, you're going to train yourself to be slow. And then everyone says, well, you should only do anaerobic and short sprints, 10 yards. Well, you need to combine the two because if you don't have a good aerobic base, if you can't run long distance, if you can't bike for 20, 40, 60 minutes and do those things at a sustained heart rate, you're going to have a bad delivery system. And if you have a bad delivery system, that's going to impact the way that you recover, the way that you eat food, and then you can deliver nutrients to your body. If you have a better cardiovascular system, you're just going to get nutrients across your body better. You're going to have better blood flow, and blood flow leads to recovery. And then on the anaerobic side, anaerobic should be used more of setting the foundation to really drive hormones. If you do anaerobic right and you do it just short of you feel like you're going to vomit. Now we're dumping, testosterone, epinephrine, growth hormone, all these great things in our system that are only going to help with our training to maximize what it is we've been doing. So you have to have a good blend of both. It can't be one or the other. It has to be both. And that's what makes a good starting pitcher. And going back to the really old school view, they used to do, jogging and hard sprint work. So to me, that's still kind of the good golden scenario, the gold standard of being able to handle both. And you need to be a good hybridized athlete to be a starting pitcher. You have to be able to run hard, aggressive, and you have to be able to do sustained long duration. So if you want to start getting above those four and roughly a third innings pitched on the average side of things, we need to be able to sustain high volumes at high intensities for a long period of time. After that, once we're going to go a little more in depth on the arm care side of things here, we look at these measures, and this is kind of part of that functional training. Is number one, we look at arm score, which is going to be taking our internal, external scaption and that pinch grip and comparing that to our body weight. We want to see a minimum of 70% of our body weight. So if we weigh 100 pounds, we want to see 70 pounds of total strength in all those measures. And if you don't have that, the app's going to be giving you that training to build into that. The next thing we look at is shoulder balance. So front side strength versus backside strength. Traditional research says we want to be way stronger on the backside, which was really good when everyone was hurting their shoulders. But now everybody is thrashing up elbows. So one of the reasons that we've changed with arm care are metrics to be more of a 1-to-1. So if we have 40 pounds of IR, we want 40 pounds of ER. If we have 60 pounds of ER, we want 60 pounds of IR. So we want to balance that shoulder out. And one of the reasons is as we're getting into layback, that's actually the eccentric phase of our internal rotators. So if we're too strong on the backside, well, there's nothing really to protect our elbow. If we're too weak on the backside, there's nothing to protect our shoulder. So we want to have our cake and eat it too. So that's where the custom training comes in to help fix that shoulder balance. The next thing is what we call strength velocity ratio, SVR. So how strong are you for your velocity? So we want to see guys that are 60% stronger than their velo. What we mean on the SVR is this is a long-term predictor. So what we've seen is athletes that have a bad strength compared to their velocity is as the season goes on, they start to lose and regress and they're not able to quite pitch deep into the games. All of a sudden their command starts to suffer. And the reason for that is as you throw through the season, you're going to naturally change that range of motion in your arm. That's going to happen across the board. You're going to start increasing in some spots, losing in others. And if you don't have the strength base to support that change in range of motion, performance suffers or you're going to get hurt. And last January, we sat in front of about 65, 70 PTs and ATs, and we asked them, who here has ever increased range of motion in in a joint that had weakness and seen a positive result? Not one hand went up. So that's why for us, that custom training is going to help build the stability and the mobility into those joints along with isometrics to ensure that we're moving in the right direction to get the results we're looking for. We want long-term sustainable performance, and that's where SVR comes in. And if you need more information on those, obviously go to the website. They're going to be able to cover it a lot more in depth there. This is just a quick overview. And then after that, we like our athletes to test ideally every day. And what that's going to show us is our recovery score. And then based on that recovery score, we're going to see is our strength going up, going down, or is it staying the same? And as our strength is increasing, we're going to increase our volume of training and our volume of throwing. And what that's going to allow us to do is build that robustness into our athlete. If we're seeing strength decrease, now we know it's time to deload, right? So we're using tangible data to make day to day adjustments, and we're teaching the athletes how to do that as well. On our high intensity days, we also do what's called a post exam. We want to know how taxing that event was. Because if I long toss and you long toss, or whoever's listening to this, we're not going to respond to that the same. So if we're seeing high fatigue, that means our next day needs to be deloaded, or our next high intensity day needs to be deloaded. If we're seeing low fatigue, let's add on, right? So we want to use tangible data as opposed to just guessing and throwing things against the wall and hoping something sticks. We want to be as direct as we can with the information when we're making adjustments. So when it comes to that energy system building, like we had talked about, we're going to briefly touch on this because I've kind of already talked on this one here. But aerobic activity is efficiency of delivery. So we want to increase vessels. We want to increase the size of how we're delivering that blood through the body. That's going to be our 20 to 60 minutes, couple 2, 3 times a week of just long distance. That can be stationary bike, elliptical. Some guys like to swim. When I lived out coastal, I specifically targeted surfers because they had really good blends of aerobic and anaerobic, and we saw their VO2 maxes were off the charts. And then that's going to be just again creating in a good way is like get the we're fixing the highway system. We're making the I-80 and the I-15 even better than it is. We're getting it bigger so we can handle more cars and better flow. Anaerobic is going to be our side streets, right? So we're going to be increasing the ability to dump hormones. And then when we got to take those shortcuts, yes, that's how we're going to get to that anaerobic. That's going to be hard, short durations, 8 to 12 minutes. In my mind, every day you touch a ball. Over at Northeastern, we've actually added in something that I just call it an interval run. They've coined it the Jordan run to where everybody hates it, but it's hard anaerobic training that we're getting that dump of hormones where we want guys coughing, really struggling to get across that finish line. And that's going to help with that hormone release. And those hormones are going to help strengthen ligaments, tissues, muscle repair, everything we need to long term be a starting pitcher. And the mode of it matters. So if we're trying to, not all running is the same. And that's the important thing is where everybody kind of falls short is they only pick one or the other, either aerobic or anaerobic. And you need a good combination of both. If you only do aerobic, yes, you will be slow. If you only do anaerobic, well, guess what? You're not going to be able to last a full season or a full career to consistently recover. So it has to be a good combination of both. Yes, you need to have your easy does it, just get the blood flow going because it does help cardiovascular system. That's not debatable. And then you need your very high intensity, explosive building those side streets to help you get the hormone release. So this is bridging old and new school, making sure we have a good combination of the both. And then we get into movement proficiency, right? So this is where everyone will have their disagreements. And for me, strength precedes mechanics. If you go through and you make all these mechanical changes, they're not going to be lasting unless you have the strength and the foundational fitness to handle this. You need a platform and a base of strength before you can have repeatable movement. And I just like to talk about, for anyone in the room who has kids, which is going to be most of us at this conference, probably not everybody listening to this on YouTube, but for kids, there's a reason they don't have you put them face down in the crib when they're sleeping. It's not because they don't have the mechanics to roll over. It's because they don't have the strength to roll over. When it comes to saving, obviously, the kid's life, they're not worried about what it looks like to roll over. They just want you to be able to be strong enough to roll over. And then the same thing as they start to walk. When they start to walk, it's very unstable and wobbly, and they're banging into everything and falling over. But as they build the strength, now they start to learn a gait that is consistent. And then once we have a base of strength, now our nervous system can actually repeat a movement. So unless we can repeat a movement, whether we view it as good or bad, we need to be able to have the strength to repeat it. And then once we have the strength to repeat it, now we can have the ability to adjust it through the nervous system. But whenever we take a mechanics approach to a strength problem, we're going to run into issues that lead to injuries. And just another quick example, during my time in professional baseball, we kept a movement, an adjustment log. And almost always, whenever there was a mechanical adjustment, within 6 weeks, that athlete went down with an injury. Because if they didn't have the strength base to handle those new movements, even if it's a good adjustment and we lower the stress, we're going to be stressing tissues in a new way that the body's not ready for. So once we started making sure that every single one of our athletes had a huge foundation of strength through the arm care platform, no matter what adjustment we made mechanically, pitch development wise, anything like that, we made the athletes robust enough to be able to handle those changes. So that way, anything we did, we were just bulletproofing them to be ready for those adjustments coming up. Um, so there's a great study that came out of Louisiana Tech from their Human Performance Lab done by Dr. Dave Zemansky. Go look it up. But functional strength is the base. And this is taken from NCAA athletes using the arm care platform. And long story short, as they improved their numbers in arm care, they improved their ability to repeat biomechanics. They improved their ability to throw harder. They spun the baseball better. They threw more strikes. They got more swing and miss. They won more games. So all these guys that increase their functional strength that we're measuring, that I'm looking at for my athletes, they all pitched better at the NCAA Division One level. And if you're pitching better at the Division One level, you're pitching better at the D2, the D3. You're pitching better in the minor leagues. You're pitching better in high school. So functional strength is the base for success. If you haven't seen this study, go look it up. It's amazing. And then here at Northeastern, prior to me coming on, Coach Catchell has done a very good job of basically running this same type of pyramid to where he puts, the functional strength movements down there, is the big priority using crossover symmetry, hip and core, the shoulder system, the torque system, the custom training in the arm care app. And then as we start doing that, now all of a sudden we move into movement consistency. And that's where, I've come in to help a little bit more is building out a few different drill packages for those players. And then we have a strength coach, Paul Mrazek, who comes in and starts building the strength and power. And then that leads into bigger velocity development. And then as we make these pitch design changes, what we're seeing is 3 of the last 3 years, they've had the Region 9 Pitcher of the Year. They've moved a huge amount of players on to 4-year schools. And the reason is because that development system was already in place, where we're seeing the improvement of those athletes continually grow and get better and make the improvements that they're doing. And again, it's not magic, it's just hard work. It's setting that foundation. And the one thing that we've really changed this year is adding in a lot more of that velocity and speed development. When I'm saying speed development, is we're doing that long running and we're doing the hard sprint work, right? I'm not talking about weighted balls. The speed training for sprints was already there with Mrazek's protocols, but we've just layered in the ability to dump more hormone in there. And what we're seeing is better recovery time. As we're doing our arm care testing, we're seeing athletes recover in 2 days as opposed to three, which means we're going to be able to use those guys more as the season goes on. So as we get into the postseason, as we get into the that kind of those big series that are coming up, if we have to throw a reliever back to back, we know that we're going to be able to recover them because we've done the work over the last 6 months leading into this. So it's all part of a process. It's all part of a plan. And we're not just guessing at things. We're using tangible data through arm care. We're using great strength training through Paul Mrazek. And then between Coach Catchell and myself, we're building this pyramid for these guys to make sure that they're progressing level to level. So we have a lasting, successful group that can, number one, pitch more innings, number two, pitch on shorter rest, but do it under the safe guidelines that are put in place of tracking the actual tangible recovery data. So again, functional strength leads to performance and consistency. This is the big foundation of it. If you're able to recover faster, you're gonna play better. There's research that proves it. We want to track that. We want to make sure we're doing everything we can to build a robust starting pitcher. Because for me, the most important stat on any baseball card, innings pitched if you're a pitcher. If you are not throwing more innings year to year, something's going wrong. You're not out there being efficient, you're not being, the best that you possibly can. And that's where for me is the pyramid that I have the best thing in the world? No, I'm going to keep making it better, but we've had great success with it for what it is we've been working on, and we want to make sure that these guys are we're giving you those opportunities. If you have any questions,